Did you know that just 20% of your actions anywhere in life drive 80% of your results? That means that just a few key choices or skills are the gateway to success and getting out of ADHD overwhelm, or they are what is keeping you stuck. But if you are an overwhelmed ADHD woman living in survival mode, you are probably wondering, what the heck are those 20% actions that I can take to get unstuck and dig out of this ADHD overwhelm? And if this is you, you have probably tried everything. The hacks, the planners, the apps, the productivity tips, and maybe they worked for a while, but eventually they were just too exhausting or boring or unsustainable for your ADHD brain. And if that's you, it probably also means you feel like a failure for not being able to make any of these easy solutions work. And I'm here to tell you, just because you haven't made the lasting changes you want to make yet, that does not make you a failure. It doesn't mean that you're broken or incapable. It just means you need a different approach that actually works with your ADHD brain. And so today I'm going to share the 3 areas, I call them the 3 E's, that are the 20% actions you can take to get you 80% of the way there and start to dig out of ADHD overwhelm so that you can build a life that you actually love. If you focus on these 3 things, you will get those 80% results that you have been craving. And the best part, they are simple, they are sustainable, and they're easy to come back to when life gets lifey, as it's going to do. If you're new here, I'm Tiff, a neuroscience professor with a PhD and ADHD and a mom of 2. I help women with ADHD go from overwhelmed and stuck in survival mode to truly thriving so that you can build a life you love that works in harmony with your brain. If you are tired of feeling like you are failing at life, you're in the right place, and this video is for you. Stick around because I have a free resource that I'm going to tell you about in a little bit that'll help you get started. So let's go. Let's talk about this 80-20 rule. It's also called the Pareto principle, and it turns out this rule shows up everywhere. But for our purposes today, it means that 20% of your actions actually drive 80% of your results. That means that if you double down on just those 20% important actions, you are going to get huge returns on the effort you put into those. In other words, it means you do not have to overhaul your entire life to see big results. You just need to focus on the right 20%. And so the key is to identify those 20% actions that are really going to move the needle and get you the most results, and just focus there. And after years of trial and error myself and working with other ADHD women, I've honed in on 3 areas you can focus on that will drive major results in all areas of your life. And the best part is they are simple and they are sustainable, and you can make them work for your unique brain. Now, I call these the 3 E's, and I'm going to present them in the order that you should tackle them if you go one by one. So let's dive into the first one. Without this, almost every other change you're going to want to make in your life and stick with becomes almost impossible. And that first E is empowerment. And I don't mean some woo-woo way. I mean, real talk, when you have ADHD, it can feel like you are just a passenger in your own life, and like your dopamine seeking is just driving the bus, and you go from catastrophe to catastrophe and you're barely hanging on, and you just want things to slow down so you can take the wheel. It can make you feel really helpless. But here's the actual truth. You don't always have control over what happens to you, but you do always have a choice in how you're going to respond to that thing. Now, this is really easy to say, but it's really hard to do when you have an ADHD brain, especially if you're also a people pleaser, especially when you have trained yourself to mask and act a certain way. But the minute you realize that deep down it is your choice, you become unstoppable. This might feel like a lot of responsibility at first, but having this empowerment actually means that you are in control of your destiny. Now, that is a fact, whether you want to accept it or not. So the sooner you accept it, the sooner you can get going trying to make your life the way that you actually want it to be. And here's the really cool part. Because of neuroplasticity, your brain's innate flexibility, the more you practice teaching yourself that you are in charge, that you have a choice in how you respond in any given situation, the more your brain is going to learn to default to that question, and it will actually give you back some of that power that you feel like your brain has taken away. You will start to see yourself as the driver instead of the passenger in your own life. Now, this does not mean that you should now always make perfect choices and beat yourself up when you don't. Even when you know what choices you should make, we are not always going to make the so-called right choice. Nobody's going to be perfect, no matter how in control they know they are of their decisions. So that's not what we're here for. We are here to practice this pattern. So here's an actionable tip. I want you to pick one area of your life where you feel stuck. And I want you to identify one small decision that's going to point you in the direction you want to go. I don't want you to solve the whole problem. I don't want you to overhaul anything. I want you to pick one thing you can do differently to actually change the course that you are on. Start small, build from there. Because remember, if you don't change something about the way that you are operating, nothing is going to change. Like real talk, ladies, nobody is coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. That's really good news because it means the power is in our own hands. And maybe that decision you make is getting help, is learning something new, is saying no to something you were saying yes to free up some energy to go do the things that you actually need or want to be doing. But at the end of the day, you have the choice, and choosing not to change anything is also an option that's open to you if you want to stay right where you are. And right about now, you might already be feeling a little bit overwhelmed, saying, Tiff, fine, empowered, but I'm so exhausted that I don't even know where I can fit any changes into my life. And that is such a common experience for women with ADHD, that feeling of just total exhaustion at life every single day. And so that brings us to our second E, energy. Energy is everything with ADHD. So many things we think are time management or emotion management problems actually come down to how depleted we are on a daily basis, so we aren't able to muster the energy to make better decisions, to think before we speak or act, to not be as impulsive. Because it doesn't matter how good your intentions are or how great the systems are. If you are too exhausted, it's not going to happen. So when you can learn how to manage and think about your energy, everything in your life starts to get better without you even having to try. The key is to design your schedule around your own energy rhythms, and also to just honor and accept your energy instead of judging yourself for not having enough. Because when you have low energy, that is a sign from your body and your brain that you need to rest. Whether you want to or not, it's the reality of your physiology in that moment. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. In addition to honoring your energy rhythms, it's also important to start to eliminate or reduce the things and the people that drain your energy. And also, even more importantly, is to add in or be more present for things that give you energy, or being around those people that actually give you energy. And so the good news here is that these can be tiny things, and often they're tiny things you're already doing. So if you can start by just finding small pockets of things that happen in your day or people you interact with, and start to allow yourself to notice those experiences more fully by honing in on what you're seeing, what you're smelling, what you're feeling, taking a deep breath in those moments so that your body settles in, so that your brain knows this is a time you can recharge. So these first few additions of gains don't actually take extra time, and a lot of times they don't take extra effort. For me, these are hugging my kid and walking outside, looking up at the sky, taking a deep breath. Now, just learning to be present for those moments has given me some major boosts in energy that then let me do some bigger things. But that is where I started, and they made a huge, ridiculously huge for how small they were, honestly, difference. And that's why I talk about them all the time. So it isn't about doing more. It's about doing more of the things that fuel you and less of the things that deplete you. And that might involve some tough decisions down the road, and that's okay because you're in charge. So how do we do this? Well, this is where I have a free, very simple ADHD energy reset workbook for you to download. The link is in the description. It's completely free, and it is going to help you map out your energy patterns across the day and also start to identify your drains and your gains so that you can pick a place to actually get started. today. And the thing I love about energy, and this is why I get so excited about this topic, is that really small changes drive really big results. And these initial changes are so simple to start implementing that everyone can start feeling better really quickly. And so once you feel empowered and you've started to think about your energy, how do you actually make those changes? And this brings us to the third E, experimentation. Experimentation is really about adopting a mindset of curiosity over criticism. Now, a lot of us, when we're trying to do something and it's not working, we assume something must be wrong with us and we just feel ashamed and eventually we abandon the attempt. That's the criticism part. Now, here's what I propose. Instead of shaming ourselves, we get curious about why something didn't work, and then we try something different and do the experiment and see what happens. Because if you can identify the obstacle, then you can identify some ways you think that you can actually get around that obstacle in a way that's going to work for your brain. Because obstacles are an inevitable part of, the human experience, but especially when you're trying to do something new. And encountering an obstacle doesn't make you a failure. It doesn't make you incapable. Obstacles are not a flaw in you. They're just a thing that you're going to encounter and you're going to have to figure out a way to overcome. So if we can use all the energy we used to use to shame ourselves when we encountered an obstacle and put that toward working the problem, identifying the obstacle, and just without judgment, finding solutions we think would actually work for us to get around that obstacle. And they don't have to be solutions that make any sense to anyone but you. If they work, they work. And that's a win. Almost every obstacle is one you can figure out a way to overcome if you're willing to keep trying. This is again where our neuroplasticity and our flexibility come in, because your brain will again adopt this mindset over time and start to see obstacles as just the next thing that we have to go over, under, around, through, and you build this muscle over time. And when you think about it, this is literally how you have learned every single thing in your life before this. You weren't born knowing how to do anything. If you think of a baby learning to crawl and then walk, and how many times you fall down, that is literally how you learn every new skill. You wouldn't sit down at the piano and expect to be really good at it. So something you haven't been doing is going to take practice. I truly believe that there really is not success or failure, which is how a lot of us think about it. There's either success, meaning the outcome you wanted, or you learn, you change something, and eventually you figure out how to get there by a different route. So how do you put this into action? Think of one change you want to make. Maybe it's that different decision you came up with when we talked about empowerment. And I want you to think of a strategy to make that decision easier if it's a decision you want to make, or if you're trying to not do something, how do you make making that bad decision, quote unquote, harder? How can you prime yourself to remember something? I put my car keys on things I need to remember. I put lists on my shoes before I leave for the airport if it's something I need to grab, because I know I will forget. And I might forget anyway, but it makes it less likely, okay? And then try it for like a week and see if it worked. If it didn't work, ask yourself why. If you find that you're too exhausted to do something at a certain time of day, try doing it at a different time of day. Maybe you can't work out at 5 a.m. That's cool. Me neither. Okay. Try working out at lunchtime or after the kids go to bed. Whatever works for you. All bets are off if you're willing to get creative about the solution. And the greatest thing about an experimental mindset is because there's no failure, there's only learning. Your success becomes inevitable. It might be a different route than you thought. It might take a little longer than you'd like. If you keep making progress, I promise eventually you will get to where you want to be. Because at the end of the day, progress is the point. So to recap the 3 E's, we have empowerment, energy, and experimentation. These are your 20% actions. If you can start to practice and integrate these, all areas of your life are going to start to get better, even the ones you're not consciously working on. When you have more energy, when you feel more empowered, when you start to use this experimental mindset, everywhere in life, everything is bound to get better because there's less shame, there's more energy. You're actually doing things that are aligned with your needs, your goals, and your values, and the consequences of that are that not only are you happier, you're more productive, you're moving in the direction you want to be, everyone else around you is going to notice it too, and they're all going to benefit as well. You're going to be a happier, more functional, more present version of you. And you deserve that, and so does everyone else. So if you're ready to start applying these, remember I have that free ADHD Energy Reset Workbook linked in the description. It is a quick, actionable guide that is going to help you start designing a life that works with your ADHD brain that you actually love, instead of feeling like you're constantly swimming upstream just so you can stay in the exact same spot. So remember, progress is the point, and I've got you.